Fine Day Anthem drums. That's what we're doing today. In one of the previous videos, someone asked in the comments about how Skrillex does that techno kick rumble for songs like Fine Day Anthem. So I thought today we are gonna look at that and try and build that from scratch. Also wanted to say thank you all so much for the comments under the pads video. Your support is very appreciated and it was very sweet to read all of those. And I feel honored having such nice fans. Thank you all so much. All right, let's get to work. Let's do the rumble first, and then we can look at the other parts of the drum loop. So we obviously need a kick drum. I'm just gonna grab like a short clicky one. And there are multiple ways to get the rumble. One is to put a reverb actually on a kick drum and render it out as like a sample so that you have the same rumbly reverb tail and then loop that after each kick drum. But what I find so much easier is actually just getting some white noise. You'll find lots of synths have a white noise generator somewhere. You can download white noise for free on the internet. You can even have ChatGPT generate you some white noise. Only thing is I wouldn't make it stereo. You could experiment with that, but for now I'm gonna keep it mono. So I'll just get this white noise out of Serum 2 for now. Bounce that in place. Now we got that here. Right click normalize so it's at its maximum volume. And then I'm gonna drag that into the drum rack and I'm gonna trigger it with each kick drum. And I'm gonna hold it down, make sure this is set to gate. And then for now, obviously this is just gonna sound like this. What we want is to put an EQ on this, and because white noise is all the frequencies at an equal amplitude, we could just put like a strong high cut on everything. And then let's turn the volume up. We've got some rumbling happening. And because we're re-triggering it on every kick drum, it's the same rumble after each kick. I would probably use something like Shaperbox to give it some more intense pumping, kind of like this. If you don't have Shaperbox or Volume Shaper, you can do that with Ableton stock stuff too. You can grab the shaper and then maybe turn off the snap and make a shape that looks something like this. And then we can grab a utility, set you from 0 to 50 on remote and map you to the gain. Same thing. Now the nice thing about having this white noise sample is that if you don't like the sound of that rumble, we can just move the start position in the sample. And try out some different ones. Or maybe to change the flavor of the rumble, let's see what it sounds like if we pitch it down. Oh, that gets a little more intense already. I'm gonna turn it down to 140, it's a little fast. Nice, so you can play around with that, and if you only want an atonal rumble with no subnote in it, then that's sort of your way to go. You can play around with some saturation on it maybe if you want to, you can like try that out. But if you want a sub in there, then I would recommend putting a low cut on this as well, and sort of having your rumble only happen somewhere between like 90 and 200 hertz maybe? That's a bit high, maybe 150. Let's find a different spot again. Yeah, that's kind of nice. I'm gonna turn it down a little bit, and then I'm gonna drag an 808 sub in here. That's set to a C note, and that's also just gonna be held like this. I'm gonna give it the same volume shaper, and then I'm gonna pitch you up to an F for now. And then let's look at you with an EQ real quick. The sub does have like bunch of nice overtones. It sounds really nice and warm, but I don't want it to clash too hard with the rumble. So I might just give it the fundamental and like the first, maybe a little bit of the second harmonic. And see if we can cut a little bit of low end away from the rumble. So they don't fight too hard for attention. Oh, gotta set this to gate as well. Also maybe at the end here of each quarter note, I might want the volume shaper to like fade back out again. Just to make sure the next kick kind of comes through clean and everything is out of the way for the next transient. I know this kick drum has like a weird blink note in it. Let's try a different one. That one works. And let's find a better sweet spot in the white noise for the rumble. Yeah, this sounds pretty fine now. Let's look at the waveform real quick. There's like a bit of a pause between the sub from the kick and then the actual sub here coming in. So we might be able to bring you a little bit earlier if we wanted this to be like more continuous. Alternatively, there's totally also a point to be made for this to just be more like an off bass, like a womp, womp, womp. That can feel a little more rhythmical, and sometimes you might prefer that. I'm gonna split the difference and leave it somewhere about here. And yeah, this is basically my version of making a techno kick rumble. Just sampling out some white noise, finding your sweet spot, EQing the stuff. If you want, you can add a sub and make sure the rumble doesn't get into the way of the sub, and then you are rumbling along. Now, if we want to flesh out this drum loop, I would add a rim shot on the 2 and 4. I've got a few over here that I've made with Serum. I'll show you how later. And the last one is my favorite. I'm gonna drag that in, that's already in here. So let's place those boys over here. And then maybe an offbeat hi-hat. Let's grab like a nice little closed one. Yep, that first one is kind of just good by itself. That already sounds fun. Maybe in the shaker category, there's something we can put in some interesting spaces. Like, I'm gonna just grab a few. Let's see what these would feel like. I'm gonna give them a little bit of swing. Let's repeat those and maybe make them a little bit quieter than the other hats. And then I'll get a sidechain trigger going down here. And maybe I'll grab like 1 or 2 percussion loops and just see how they fit and run those through sidechaining. That one's fun. I might just try out some different hats for that main hat. Yeah, that one's a little tighter, I like that. And then maybe as a last thing, we could grab a percussion sample, like something that has some low end, kind of like a tom or a crunch or like a stomp kind of sound, like something like this, and then filter this so that it also just becomes like a low end little whoop. You'll hear what I mean in a second. Kind of like that. And then we could put that either here or on the last offbeat of the bar, kind of over here. Kind of like a rhythm accent hit. But yeah, one of the main things with all these percussions and everything is that they're super tight, really short. None of them have like any reverb. They're all very dry. And like for some of them, I might even add some volume envelope and like cut them a little shorter. Just to get it like really tight and crispy. And then the swing kind of adds a lot of groove to it. Both of these percussion loops kind of have a little bit of swing here. Or a little offbeat rhythm hit here can also get a little tighter. There we go, just a short little whoop. Nice, that feels good. And now for a little side quest, how to make these rim shots. I have the Serum 2 here that I made those with, but I'll try to make them from scratch again. So my idea was that these like rim clicks, this kind of stuff. Obviously some of them are like wooden or like actually recorded from a drum kit or something. But my idea was you could do that with just filtered white noise. Start with some white noise and a high cut. And let's make the white noise really short with like an envelope, something like this. And then that goes through this filter, kind of over there, and that gets followed by a low cut. And then we're just gonna distort the hell out of it twice. I want these distortions also to have like a really sharp envelope, like this. Maybe we can have this filter open up a little bit more, or move this up a bit. We can also play with the pitch of the noise, of course. And let's add a compressor. It's giving us a much more spicy attack. And then maybe even just to get that transient at the start to sound even harder, just use a utility and put an envelope on the volume here. And then I'll follow this up with a hard clip distortion. This might be a bit intense over here. Might need to be a little bit shorter. Also, let's add one more filter at the end here to cut off any unnecessary low end. And then if it sounds like it's too distorted, we can like bring the white noise volume down here a bit. If you feel like it, you could add a convolver on like a super short sample to... That's kind of a long one, like let's make that really short. Kind of like this, just to add a little bit of room and stereo width in a way. Like mix that in slightly. And then obviously you can try out all kinds of different noises. That one sounds kind of nice. And where we place this first filter's cutoff is really important. For some reason, I got the best results with the Geiger counter noise. Because if the count kind of goes lower, obviously if it's really low, it's just going to sound like this. But if it's kind of somewhere around here, we can even make it a little bit stereo. Can we also put this on here? Why not? But this noise kind of makes it sound different every time I hit a key. I kind of like that, so we'll immediately get some variations. Could do a little bit of EQing here if we want to. But yeah, then if we make these envelopes really short, we kind of get a rim shot. Sweet, that can make us some cool rim shots. Or you can go on Splice. But I like making stuff from scratch. I know you don't have to make a good song, but I just like to know how to make everything. And I like to tell you, so screw you. And I think I might as well show you how I make the sub for this kind of stuff, or like just nice round subs in general. This will come up multiple times, like whenever we make dubstep stuff and whatever. My theory is that the more surface area this wave takes up in this area and in this area, without having like any weird fluttery kind of things happening in the waveform, the smoother and louder the sub is going to be. So technically, the loudest waveform is a square wave, because it just fills up as much area as possible. I don't know if that's completely true, but it feels true, and I'm just going to say that. But we don't want a square wave as our sub, we kind of just want a round version of it. So what I do in here is, first of all, let's take the phase down of that sine wave, so it just looks like this. And then we can even zoom in here, we just need the first couple of harmonics here. We can add in some odd harmonics, which is every other bar of these. And you might notice that if I add this one in, it kind of flattens out the peaks on each side. And now there's a little bit of headroom, so we could normalize this, and now it's a little bit louder. We can add in more, and then you might notice that now there's this little like dent going inside of the waveform here. If we add the next odd overtone, it's actually going to even that out. So we can sort of balance that out. If I add more of this, I'm gonna have to add more of this one too. And we can even add the next one if this one goes a little overboard. So you can sort of like build your sub with overtones, but usually the first 3 should be enough. Something like this. And then I personally, for warmth, like to add a little bit of even harmonics. I know that reduces our maximum volume of the waveform, but I personally think it just sounds a little bit nicer. Like maybe something like this. And then let's just normalize this so it's as loud as it could possibly be. And then that's like a nice loud sub that has a little bit of warmth with those even overtones. But yeah, that's usually how I go about it. Sometimes if I'm like making a rage beat or something, then I'd like start distorting it and so on. But usually I'll try and keep it as clean as possible, especially for things like this. Just real quick, here are 2 more examples of me trying this kind of drum loop. This is from an earlier project file where I was kind of practicing this for the video, but these kind of turn out nice too. So we still got that whoop on that last bar. And I think in this other loop, I put it here. Little whoop. Where is that actually? And this boy here. Could be a little lower too. That feels a little darker and like has a little more energy, I think. All right, now you know how to make a techno loop with some rumble. I'm gonna make a little pack again with like 10 rumbly kicks, 10 rim shots, and maybe some percussion loops, and put those on my Patreon, link in the description. And then you can use those as like building blocks to make your own loops, or make them from scratch, whatever you wanna do. Thank you so much for watching, and have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.